Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Parent, and I am the CEO at Square Group. We are actually having a podcast today called Driving the Business of Science. We do this because over the course of the years that I've been in business, I've run into a lot of very interesting people. And I think there's so much to the life science world outside of just doing the straight drug development from the scientists. Not that we haven't talked to a number of scientists over time, but I think there's so many other ancillary areas around it. Today, we have a very interesting conversation around the whole VC world in life science and then transitioning from that. So I think you'll be very excited about who we have today. Um, we have Aneesha Raghunathan, who's on. It's Raghu and then Nathan. I know. I got it right. Um, and we're going to have her on today. She is the founder and CEO of Rightview.ai. But before that, we're going to actually talk about a few other things. First of all, Square is a managed service provider. We manage infrastructure for life science companies, pharmaceutical, biotech, med device. We also have a content repository called RegDocs 365, which hosts any type of clinical and regulatory content. We start out with a TMF EDM, but we now have what we call Life Science Launchpad. And we're putting together a series of AI-based tools because we have so much content within that content repository. So we'll get into some of that discussion today, actually, because that's going to be the focus of Aneesha and what she's looking to do. So Aneesha, again, the CEO and founder of Rightview.ai. Glad to have you on today. Please tell us your story.
Yeah, no, thanks, Keith. It's great to be here. Easy way to remember my last name is Ragu Sauce Nathan Hot Dogs. I like to say, although putting those two things together maybe not so much great idea. But yeah, it's awesome to be here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rightview. We're a new company building in the AI space for life sciences. I'll get into that later, but just to talk a little bit about my background. Before this, I spent 11 years on the investing side of life sciences technology. So across venture capital, private equity, and most recently leading a practice at a large growth equity firm. And so, I looked at almost every category of software that this industry has run on over the past 11 years. Some things have changed, others have not. And I'm kind of able to really sit in on the conversation from a board level today, as well as a user of some of these technologies myself, and now as a builder of something new. So would love to get into all the nuances.
Well, it's interesting because it's great that you've been able to see it from one view of it, from the actual investing view of it. From my view, I get to see it all the way because we have a system called ARC, an Audit Ready Compliant Cloud, and we host applications all the way from preclinical for manufacturing. So I get to see it from the operational level, from the different people and how the silos get built up over the years in this industry, and how small companies become very large companies, and how they add people, and all of a sudden places that were very collaborative now become very siloed again. And it happens so many times over and over and over again. I'd love to hear your view of it from the VC side of things. And for those 11 years, tell us a little bit more about that, and what was it like getting into that and doing that when you first
Yeah.
started, and then how did it change over those 11 years?
Totally. It's fascinating. I would say I remember the transition from paper-based systems to electronic systems across this industry. And when you think about the big companies that were really the first winners of verticalized applications to life sciences, everyone thinks of Viva. But the truth is, a lot of the activity was actually just moving from paper-based to electronic. Like the thesis behind my investment in Zen QMS, was really that QMS used to be an entirely paper-based, spreadsheets-based internal DIY process, and moving to electronic systems helped the industry a lot, especially in COVID, for example, where you weren't able to access your physical filing cabinet, right? We saw the same thing with eTMF systems, where we had the movement from paper-based filing cabinets to an electronic system. And I would say that was like one of the main transitions I witnessed over the past 11 years. And now the next future wave of this is that, okay, we have a bunch of repositories where information lives. How do we actually connect that, make it actionable, and drive quality rather than just like a place to store your information, right? So I think that's what we're seeing as kind of the next wave, and that's really what we're trying to do at Rightview.
That's great. And it's funny because being in the middle of the IT side of that and being able to see that transition from paper, even the fact of just even scanning in paper and using it electronically from where it is, we're still seeing projects today, even today, where people are putting faxes in and things like that. It all depends on where you're at. Some of the regulatory authorities still get the faxes in, and you have to be able to do that. So it may be, that the people you're actually submitting to are backwards. So you got to do that. So all those things kind of come together, and it's funny as an industry how slow to add in some of the new technologies or bring those things up. And I understand that we all have patient safety issues, and that's what everybody's worried about that the big time. Um, but it's interesting because over time you'll see that the big pharma companies were the most resistant to change, but then the new biologics companies and um, they start out the cell therapy, biologic. They're smaller teams moving very fast, trying to get through their money as quick as they can and try to get to that next round. They may take a little bit more chances here and there as they try to do things, but I think that as they put in more and more systems, we're finding the capabilities of adding more intelligence on the side. So looking at where you were on the VC side or the funding side of things to go into the actual back into the market and actually look at putting tools out there that are going to help them. Give me a little bit more of a thesis around what you're doing with RightView.ai and how that's going to work.
Yeah, definitely. I think the blessing and the curse of being in the investing seat for so long is that you see a lot of things happening and you get to sort of have this bird's eye view over the industry and kind of participate where you think something should be built. Like I'm a huge fan of ZenQMS and what they've built. And I got to sort of invest in that company and, partner with the founder to grow that, right? And so I think that was super rewarding. It also made me really want to get in the ring myself because I think we're living in a time in the technology curve, which is really exciting. And I think for all of the talk around AI and what we can do with it, I think there's no doubt that this is going to be the future. But I think the way we go about it is different, especially within regulated spaces like life sciences. And so just seeing a lot of market entrants into life sciences who maybe didn't come from the regulatory and compliance oriented mindset plus the innovation side, like I found there to be a real gap in how people are building responsible systems for regulated end markets, and that's something that I felt I could add value to. Also having studied the space, I became frustrated at just how many point solutions there are in this end market, and there's more silos actually being created through technology when technology is meant to eliminate silos. And that really just bothers me. And you've got the two most innovative end markets in history, right? With life sciences, you're literally on the cutting edge of innovation, you're developing new therapies. And then you have technology. And so, it being able to unify that and actually drive positive impact is why I left to do this. I felt like I wanted to get in the ring and be part of that story. And so yeah, now I'm here doing it. But the thesis is basically that we want to create technology that isn't a static repository of information, but rather can help drive towards quality and towards action rather than being like a static system of record.
One of the things I want to let the people viewing this or listening to this podcast know is that I met Aneesha when we were at DIA in Philadelphia this year. I was in the booth, and we have a booth every year because it's one of those things where if you don't have a booth, people wonder where you went to and things like that. So we always have a booth, and we try to figure out who's there and who's doing what. And Aneesha came up and we were talking, and I loved her story. I loved the concept that she was out there doing the financing aspect of it and putting money where she thought the ball was going to roll. And and now she's in it and doing that stuff. So I thought that was going to be a great topic for a podcast. So I'm glad that you stopped at the booth and we got that initial conversation going. A couple things that come to mind for me. You've lived through a couple very interesting years. I mean, the COVID era and all the stuff that happened during those few years. How did it affect when you were looking at different investments? How did it affect those investments?
Yeah. No, it was a crazy time. So, I remember being in an investment committee for a deal in like March of 2020 and basically being on pause after that because we weren't sure what was going to happen with the world. And then, there was a huge boom in investment deployment in early 2021, even as things like Omicron and these other COVID variants were happening. And a lot of the companies that were getting funded in early 2021, there was a sense of optimism around tailwinds that COVID could lead to. In other words, okay, things like the movement between paper to electronic, right? Like that is a tailwind that's here to stay, but COVID sort of forced that acceleration in the adoption curve of technology. It sort of made it such that there were no other options. You had to have an electronic system because you couldn't physically go and get your records during this time. So it's kind of interesting because obviously COVID was awful and terrible, but the one small silver lining in it was that it did sort of move the industry forward. Like if you look at even like the RBQM space, right? A lot of that sort of came or benefited from the COVID pandemic. So it's um it's kind of interesting to think about how that affected investment theses. And I would say there was a big focus around, okay, where is the puck going with a post-COVID world back in 2020 and 2021, right? Investors are always thinking 5 years ahead, at least minimum, right? And if you're in venture, you're thinking 10 years ahead, right? So you're trying to find where the puck is skating, I guess. And COVID was a very interesting time for that.
Well, it's interesting because I saw some of the exact same things, like the whole concept of decentralized clinical trials, patient-reported outcomes, all the things of gathering data, different ways of gathering data. It really helped to push that part of the industry, and I think it helped a lot to get there. Now, I will say that maybe a few years after COVID finished, it was almost like we took a step backwards and people were evaluating. But I still think that the tailwinds were there for us to keep moving forward with that. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get AI jumping on top of different things and people looking at all the data. And now AI is the real big tailwind behind what's going on and pushing for that. And I looked at it from one view, and I'd love to hear what your view is on it. But when I looked at it as everybody, because I had been involved with a couple of DIA committees on AI, and we're always working on the different use cases we wanted to do and things like that. And there's a lot of pilots going on and things like that. But it seemed up until a point when Chat GPT finally came out and people were starting to do things. And I knew that something had happened because on one of the committees that we had all these people in regulatory that were there, and they're like, oh, well, we would never let AI create documents that we would submit to the regulatory authorities. And then Chat GPT came out, and all of a sudden everybody's trying to make these documents. And it's like the next couple of meetings we had, it was like, how fast can we use things that we can generate to go to the FDA? So it was like it
Yeah.
was almost overnight where it switched, which was actually really good for the industry because I think if you can get the quality and the regulatory people behind it, it will help out a lot because I think that's where the rubber meets the road and can we get it past quality? Can we get it past regulatory? And if we can work with those guys and do that and look at the guidance, I think it helps out a lot to do that. Tell me a little bit from your aspect. What did you see when you're looking at AI and the uses for AI?
Yeah, for sure. I think document generation is sort of like the tip of the spear. These are generally models that are good at language, large language models. So naturally drafting and document generation is the tip of the spear. Also, it turns out pharma loves documents, right? Everything has documents, SOPs. There's every function within life sciences has a cadre of documents that need to be generated and filed somewhere. So I think the generating of the documents is sort of the tip of the spear. I actually think the reasoning across documents and finding discrepancies, errors, issues is actually a better use case than the generation because you can't audit the generation in an easy way. Like if it comes up with a document, okay, you gave it a couple formats and it was able to, replicate that, great. Auditing that is actually quite hard. Whereas if you look at the use case of reconciliation of documents, finding information that already exists but might be inconsistent or might have a different conclusion and surfacing both those inconsistencies as well as the location of where the information lives. That is a great use case for AI. It's not as sexy as document generation. It's maybe a little harder to show that in a demo because it requires you to have the information to begin with, right? So it's not as easy to demonstrate, but I actually think that's what makes sense for the industry. It's like not necessarily the creation, but more the reconciliation and the auditing of where information lives, how it's being changed. Like that type of workflow is super time consuming. Like if you think about, even the TMF readiness stuff, right? Where it's like, humans have to spend time figuring out where the information is, what changed with the information, and what needs to be updated or edited or changed or added. Like that, I feel like is actually more valuable than the generation of the document, but it does seem like there's a lot of focus on the generation of the document at the moment.
Yeah, well, and what's because I think people look at how much time it takes them to generate things, and can I get rid of medical writers? Can I do this? Can I do that? And the reality is, you're always going to need human in the loop. And I think that in this industry, that's part of the quality aspect of it is that human in the loop capability there. I think you're right, though, is unlocking data in non-structured data that's out there. You've got the structured data that's in forms and things like that. That's relatively easy, and we've had lots of tools that can actually pull structured data out. But that non-structured data that's kept into a lab report or kept into this report, be the ability to pull out the nuances in some of the lab notes that a doctor may put. I think those are the kind of things, or a serious adverse event that maybe somebody overlooked because they didn't put two and two together. I think that ability to look at those kind of things is where it is. I know when I first started with us, I knew we had lots of content locked in the documents within our document repository. And I went to three or four different companies that were doing AI based things to try to bring them together and look at what they could do. And part of it is, can I work with this company? Do they really know what they're talking about? And what can we do together? We've settled on a couple that we're working with now for a couple of very, very good pointed solutions out there. But it's interesting. I love the fact that you're going out there and you've even named the company Rightview.ai. So you want people to know that you've got that right view of what AI is going to do for people. So whether that's the way you intended it or not, I'm
That
taking
is,
I'm
you got
taking it
it.
that way. I'm taking it
You
that way.
got it.
Um,
Actually, someone told me the other day that, and this is not, I wasn't intending, Right View, the name was exactly what you said. It was, we want to be the right view. It's very clear, it's very common. Somebody told me the other day that right view is actually the first step on the eightfold path to enlightenment in Buddhism, which I had no idea of. But that was kind of a cool coincidence.
Now you've got seven more that you can do after that for other products you can develop. How's that? Or subsidiaries. Maybe you've got the way to grow there. So
Exactly, exactly.
I love that. Well, it's interesting because I've dealt with companies that are doing deep and dirty drug discovery type stuff where they're looking at molecules and trying to pull apart molecules and doing different things. I've looked at people, companies that are doing things like we're doing a thing with protocol analysis. We're creating master ICFs. We're doing all these different things, and I think that I look at where this industry spends the most time doing the manual effort, and there's so much wasted effort on our part. You talk about all those systems over the years that you looked at and how things are. I still think in our industry, because we have such a transition of people going from some people work at a healthcare provider, they go to a CRO, they go to a sponsor, and they're going back and forth between the different ones there, different systems all the time. Um, there just is no consistency in between all these different things. And like I said, we're still dealing with paper coming in from different places, and you may buy a compound from somebody who's got the first the first couple phase 1 clinical trials with it were in paper, and they've never digitized that stuff. So you still got to do something with that. So, we're still seeing many and many of those kind of things out there, um, with some of the tools. Things like, we've got a bunch of PDFs, very large PDFs with thousands of documents in them that a CRO gives back to a sponsor and says, here's your study. Well, what the heck are you going to do with that? It's kind of crazy. It's like, and then I'm going to give that to an auditor from the FDA or a reviewer to look at that. It just doesn't work that way. So I think
Totally.
that's where the AI tools come in very handy, and we can do those, and kind of pull those things together. Um, with that being said, where do you think it's going from here, and where are you going to like push it when you talk about where's the puck going and what's happening 5 years, what's happening 10 years out? What's your thought on that, and where you want to go with that?
Yeah, I think the system of record era is not going away, but it's sort of finished as a place where anything new is getting built. What I think is getting built sits above those systems and does the work that nobody really owns today, which is what we were talking about, checking whether documents agree with each other, finding inconsistencies, surfacing those inconsistencies, right? That's no one's job per se. It's like everyone's job and no one's job at the same time. So I think, everything that sort of layer of work, I think will see real changes with AI to the point where quality moves from being something that's done after the fact to being done at the point of work, like right in the moment, because these things are being surfaced, because you can catch errors in real time. You're not waiting till the end of a study to, reconcile all the data and get rid of, queries that came up, or you're not figuring out, before an inspection whether your TMF has everything in it and it's organized and it's consistent. So it's basically shifting the role of life sciences professionals from checking and reconciling and and sort of tracking to actually focusing on quality and implementing good quality in the study or in their process, which I think is going to benefit the industry a ton, assuming that we can all get out of our own way and sort of set up that system to be able to do that, right? So I think the companies that are going to crush it in the future are going to know that it's not beneficial for them to spend hours reconciling documents and figuring out what changed and how does that affect a different document. It's going to be identifying risk and quality based triggers like at the point in which they occur and then taking steps to course correct and create better process, right? So I think that's really where the puck is going. It's more towards quality and judgment and away from reconciliation and tracking.
Well, Aneesha, this has been a great conversation. I'm really happy that we were able to meet when we were out at DIA, and I wish you the best of luck with the new company. As we end the podcast, I wanted to kind of just get your final thoughts on things. I know that I've been very appreciative of you being able to be on today and talk specifically about the fact that you were helping to fund this and get companies going and get them going, and now you're dipping your toe in the water and you're gonna push yourself forward to get it going. Maybe you'll be getting that puck and doing the get the goal on that one. That'll be a good one. I like that. So, any last thoughts?
No, yeah, it's been awesome talking about this. I think I always think about sort of where we are on the adoption curve, right? And I tend to want to talk to a lot of the folks kind of at the cutting edge, and you're definitely doing some really exciting things there. So it's been a good conversation. I would say for us, like we're looking for nimble, innovative organizations, life sciences companies that want to partner with us, and we build things. That's what we do. So what we're looking for, design partners and innovative companies that want to create this part of their process around documents and system of actions rather than system of records. So that's what I would
I
say.
can tell you that there are companies out there that we've run into some of them. We've run into some that are somewhat hesitant, and it takes a long time for them to get out of their own way to get moving forward. but then there are other ones that are they're full steam ahead. They want to get things done. So keep looking, get the right ones out there, and help them, because that could be the leader for what we're trying to do out in this industry. So, Aneesha, thank you
Definitely.
very much for coming on board today. Everybody, thank you for listening in to the podcast. This is Driving the Business of Science podcast. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Keith. Take care.